Elias Mbugua, a ranger with a decade of experience, knew these lands like the back of his hand. His sun-scorched face bore the marks of long days under the open sky, and his eyes held the calm of a man who had seen it all, from the fury of poachers to the tenderness of newborn antelopes. Elias was more than a guardian of the reserve. He felt like part of this land, where every animal, every rustle of grass spoke to him in a language understood only by those who had dedicated their lives to the wild. On the day it all began, the sun stood at its zenith, and the air shimmered with heat. Elias was patrolling the western boundary of the reserve in his old Jeep, which creaked and groaned but never failed him. He was about to turn back toward camp when he noticed movement at the edge of the thickets. There, beneath a sprawling acacia, stood a lioness. Her golden fur was dulled by dust, and her movements were awkward, almost pained. She limped heavily, favoring her front paw, and even from a distance, Elias could see her flanks heaving with labored breaths. The lioness was emaciated, but her rounded belly revealed a secret. She was pregnant. Beside her stood an adult lion. His thick, dark mane swayed in the breeze, and his eyes, usually ablaze with pride and strength, looked different. There was no threat in them, no familiar roar that made hearts skip a beat. The lion simply stood, never leaving the lioness's side, and his gaze fixed on Elias was almost human, as if he weren't defending his territory but pleading for help. Elias stopped the Jeep, turned off the engine, and froze. His mind was a battleground of instinct and duty. Approaching a wild lion was madness, but abandoning the lioness who was clearly suffering was unthinkable. He knew that an untreated wound could be fatal, and the cub she carried would perish with her. Elias took a deep breath, grabbed the first aid kit from the trunk, and keeping his rifle at the ready, slowly stepped out of the vehicle. The lion noticed his movement. He stood, took a step forward, and Elias froze, braced for any outcome. But the beast didn't charge. He didn't growl. He just watched, alert, wary, but without aggression. His eyes seemed to say, "I trust you. Help her." Elias, hardly understanding how he found the courage, lowered his rifle and moved slowly toward the lioness. She lay there, breathing heavily, making no attempt to flee. Her wound, a deep gash on her front paw, was bleeding, and flies were already buzzing around it. Elias knelt, moving carefully to avoid startling her or the lion, who stood just a few meters away. He cleaned the wound with antiseptic, applied a bandage as best he could, and poured a little water from his flask into the lioness's mouth. She swallowed weakly, but her eyes, though clouded with pain, followed his every move. Elias left a piece of meat from his supplies beside her, not much, but enough to help her regain strength. When he was done, he backed away slowly toward the Jeep, never turning his back on the lion. The beast didn't move, only tilting his head slightly to watch the man leave. Elias started the engine and drove off, but his heart raced the entire way back to camp. He didn't know if he'd done the right thing by risking such close contact with wild animals, but something told him he had done what he had to. The next morning, as soon as the sun rose over the savannah, Elias returned. He feared he'd find only an empty spot, or worse, signs of tragedy. But what he saw made him pause. The lioness lay under the same acacia, her breathing steadier, her wound looking cleaner. Beside her, like a steadfast guardian, lay the lion. His massive body nearly touched hers, and his eyes were fixed on the Jeep. He didn't growl, didn't rise, didn't bare his fangs. He just watched, and in that gaze, Elias felt something he'd never experienced before. Gratitude, trust. He couldn't find the words. For the next hour, Elias observed from a distance, hesitant to approach closer. The lioness slept, and the lion kept his eyes on him. Elias left more water and meat, this time closer to the Jeep, and drove off, a tightness gripping his chest. He hadn't been prepared for a wild animal to look at a human not as a threat but as an ally. Over the next week, Elias returned daily. The lioness slowly regained her strength, and the lion, as if understanding that the ranger posed no danger, allowed him to come closer. He no longer stood or tensed, just lay there, guarding his mate while Elias tended to her wound or brought food. On the seventh day, as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in crimson hues, Elias noticed the lioness starting to stand. She was still weak but could move. The lion, as always, was by her side, his presence almost ceremonial. He wasn't just protecting her, he was giving thanks. On the eighth day, Elias arrived at dawn and saw that the lioness had given birth. Two tiny cubs, blind and clumsy, squirmed at her side. The lion lay a short distance away, his mane swaying in the breeze, his gaze fixed on Elias. The ranger froze, afraid to disturb the moment. He quietly left food and water and drove away, knowing his mission here was complete. A month later, when the savanna was cloaked in fresh green after brief rains, Elias saw the lioness again. He was patrolling the same part of the reserve when she emerged from the thickets. Behind her, stumbling awkwardly, followed two healthy, sturdy cubs. Their fur gleamed in the sunlight, and their eyes sparkled with curiosity. The lioness stopped a few meters from the jeep, looked at Elias with a long, deep gaze, and turned away. The lion appeared from the grass, his mane flowing like dark flame. He didn't come closer, but his eyes met Elias's, and in that look was an entire story. The lioness led her cubs away, and they slowly vanished into the golden light of the sunset. The lion lingered for a moment, as if saying goodbye, then followed his family. Elias remained alone, sitting in the jeep, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles whitened. He didn't know why his eyes suddenly stung, but in that moment he felt part of something greater than the reserve, greater than his job. The story spread through the camp like wildfire. Rangers, locals, even tourists visiting Ngoro retold it, each adding their own details. Some said the lion was a spirit of the savanna. Others claimed Elias could speak to animals, but Elias himself never told the story. He only smiled, gazing at the sunset, and thought about how thin the line is between man and beast when it comes to trust. Years later, when Elias's hair had turned gray and his jeep had finally broken down for good, he still returned to that acacia. Sometimes he thought he saw the shadow of a lion in the tall grass or heard a distant roar full of strength and gratitude. And each time, looking at the stars above the savanna, he knew this land would never cease to amaze him. Dear friend, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new incredible adventures from the world of wildlife.